So today I want to talk to you about what my mother was telling me when I was little once in a while. It's about her hometown. Her hometown is a small village where there was no street lamp in the town, and there was no single television or laundry machine or anything. I think they had radios or something, but just radio. No laundry machine or television. Of course, not even the internet or anything. So once it gets dark, it was really pitch dark around the house or around the area. So nobody could walk around once it got dark. But it's interesting that every time I heard the story about a person got missing and the person couldn't get back home at nighttime until the next morning, the villagers over there started to search him because everybody got so worried, and the family were worried about him. And they tried to search him, but they couldn't find him. And people would say what happened to him, but they couldn't find him. They gave that up and just get back home and wait until the next morning. But it turned out that the person came back home by himself the next morning, and everybody started to ask him what happened, and he answered. He started to explain what happened the previous night, that he was walking in the midst of the mountain when an old lady started to talk to him, saying, like, why don't you come into my place, I'll let you take some break. You must be tired walking around here in the midst of the mountain. So he thought it was good, and he got into the old lady's house. The old lady was living by herself in the midst of the mountain, and he got in, and the old lady said he could take a bath. So he gets into the bathtub, and maybe it was a hot bath and it was a good one, and he could relax himself, and after that he started to take a nap. And he woke up to find himself lying on the ground, and there was no single house or anything around him, and he was all drenched, all wet with dirt, like urine or feces. And he found that he had been fooled by an animal in the mountain, like a fox or raccoons. He was drenched with urine. He thought it was a bathtub, but it was not it. It was a manure pool that was around there, here and there, in the field or somewhere else. So, but he couldn't get back home because it was pretty dark around him. He couldn't really see anything. So he waited until the next morning came, and he got back to the village where he was living and started to explain to the people when people started to ask him what happened the previous night. And I think it's a very interesting story, just about 50 years ago in my mother's hometown. And my mother even said, comes to think of it, it was a very funny story, and it's something, there was something fishy about it. And I think the people around that time had really believed that, and I think it's very interesting, even in Japan. And, I'm currently living in Japan, and nobody would believe that if that happens. But they believed that for real, and nobody had a doubt about it. It's very interesting. And I started to think how different it is from the time we were living in. And that's a small town, or maybe it might be called a village. I think maybe it could happen because as a kid, I used to hear stories from my grandparents about how they were living, and they started to tell me about half fantasy and half real sort of stories. And I couldn't really make a difference between the reality and fairy tale, because those kind of people at the time were telling me just like that. It was just like, fox or a raccoon would fool people kind of stories. It's interesting to hear, but now I think back about it, and I think it's very unusual now, and that was pretty usual at that time. And I think it's very interesting about the old time of Japan. I don't mean that I want to get back to that time, but it's interesting in terms of how different they are.